Welcome to the Off the Charts Football Podcast. It is Throwback Thursday around here. We've got Aaron Schatz of Football Outsiders, the Off the Charts OG himself. Welcome back to the show, Aaron.
Hey, thanks for having me back. It is reunion weekend.
And of course, following on the Betway Betting Corner, we've got Corey March, but he is joining us now. He'll be joining us. We'll invite you to do some of the most important games of the week, show you how we did it back in the day before bringing Aaron in to the Betway Betting Corner. How does that sound to you, Corey?
Sounds like a plan. We could use Aaron's expertise. Good to be here with you guys. It's like we're home for the holidays.
I'm looking forward to hearing about a little bit about maybe some of the differences between what SIS has for certain teams and what Football Outsiders has for certain teams, because there have been a lot of interesting teams this year, and a lot of them are playing important games this weekend.
That's one way of putting it. It definitely has been an interesting year. Quick reminder before we get going, sign up for Betway at betway.com/offthecharts. Off the Charts listeners get up to a $250 free bet with their first wager. And of course, stick around for later in the show where all three of us will be providing boosted parlays from the good folks over at Betway. Aaron, before we get into the most important games of the week, I just need to ask you about that last play of that Patriots game. Can you give like a sort of like moment by moment reenactment of what's going through your brain as it happened in slow motion as it did for everybody else?
So we were at my mom's house. We got together for a first night of Hanukkah celebration with my brother and his kids and me and my girlfriend and my mom and my daughter. And, you know, we had done latkes and gifts and whatever and not watched the first half of the game. So we turned on the second half of the game and the Patriots are dominating on defense. Like their offense isn't moving the ball very much, but they're dominating on defense. We're like, oh, they're going to win this game easy. It gets down to 4th and 10 and they allow the pass. And I'm like, oh no, here we go. And then the Keelan Cole play, I think he was out of bounds, but it was one of those plays that whatever they called on the field was going to go because there wasn't clear evidence. So, all right, fine. At least at that point, you get to go to overtime unless you do something so phenomenally stupid that it goes down in NFL history. And then I had to watch the look on my poor nephew's face as the Patriots handed the ball to the other team on the last play of the game. It is, I don't think that you can argue this, the dumbest play in NFL history. First of all, the Patriots never should have even run a play. If you're not going to try a Hail Mary in that situation, you kneel on it. Do you really think you're going to run for 60 yards? No. You kneel on the ball and go to overtime. Second, Stevenson, who had a great game otherwise, should have never lateraled the ball to Myers to begin with. But most of all, Myers, knowing he was not supposed to lateral, said after the game, I knew I was not supposed to lateral. So didn't see Chandler Jones, thought he saw Mac Jones open in the middle of the field. Is Mac Jones going to run 70 yards for a touchdown? This was the equivalent of Fred Merkel's boner. Like, people have been looking for a name for this play, and I hate to do this to Jacoby Myers, but this is Myers' boner. It's the equivalent, of the Fred Merkel two people standing on second base back in whatever that was, 1912.
This day and age, not a lot of people know what that is and are very confused right now. But famous baseball play with a funny name.
I support it.
Oh, and did I add, by the way, that it was extra frustrating because it basically ended their season. If they win that game, they have a playoff odds around 65%. By losing that game, we have their playoff odds at about 15%. That play basically ended their season.
Or at least knocked them out of being in the driver's seat going forward and having their own destiny. Yeah, pretty unbelievable. Hard to figure out how you confuse Mac Jones for Chandler Jones. Like, what did he just see the Jones on the back of his jersey? Because everything else about those guys, they don't exactly look alike.
I saw that Chandler Jones missed the tackle and gave up on the play. And that's the only reason why he was where he was, because he didn't actually follow the play after he blew the tackle and ended up being in the right place at the right time because of, I guess you could call it laziness.
So that's pretty interesting you said that, Aaron, because Joe Rosales of SIS, he also said that was the dumbest play in NFL history. I went straight to Leon Lett because
Leon Lett's pretty bad, but Leon Lett didn't know the rules.
Right. And also this, the sort of leverage of this idiocy, it was a compelling argument that Joe made. Like this really was high leverage dumbness, where I think you guys have convinced me that it is the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
Lett thought he was doing the right thing. Myers said after the game he knew he was doing the wrong thing, and he did it anyway.
Unbelievable.
That's hilarious. I think you're right about the highest leverage stupidity ever. But for me, anytime a guy drops the ball moments before crossing into the end zone, that is the highest level stupidity for me.
That's the other Leon Lett.
Yeah, or was it DJ Moore earlier this year did that?
So many people have done that now. That's a good point though. There are two Leon Letts that could be in the conversation. The Thanksgiving game where he touched the field goal and gave another shot, and then the Super Bowl. That was a Super Bowl, right?
Yeah, where he dropped the ball before he got to the goal line, returning.
Although it was like a 30-point game anyway, so. It's great to see from the perspective of a non-Patriots fan that there's just a little bit coming back around at the Patriots after years and years of other teams doing things like that.
Well, the Raiders have to now do something stupid because the tuck rule was revenge for the phantom roughing the passer on Sugar Bear Hamilton in 1976. But now the Raiders got the Patriots back. So now the Patriots have to somehow it may take 15 years, but the Raiders will do something phenomenally stupid against the Patriots like 10 or 15 years from now to get back on this. Watch, it will happen.
Is there like some next level education you can give us on Sugar Bear Hamilton's boner?
It was one of those really bad roughing the passer calls where he barely touched the quarterback and they called roughing the passer on him, and it gave the Raiders continuing the ball, and the Raiders went on to beat the Patriots in the playoffs and eventually win the Super Bowl.
Corey, did you know about Sugar Bear's boner?
I didn't, but I was surprised to hear that these phantom roughing the passer calls were a thing in the past too. I thought that was only a recent development.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember the play too well, whether it's the kind of play that these days we would say it was roughing the passer, but like in 1976, it was the kind of play that was never called roughing the passer, and then it was in that.
Could you imagine in 1976 explaining to them that you can't land on the quarterback?
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if a physicist followed football. Physicists today don't understand the idea that you can't land on the quarterback. If you're launching at the quarterback, you're going to land on the quarterback. That's how weight works.
Yeah. You have a physicist or like a 7-year-old explain that to you. It doesn't make sense either way you look at it. All right, let's skip ahead. Let's talk about the most important games of the week. Aaron, we'll give it back over to you to lead these off. What do you got first for us?
All right. So the first really important game of the week, this surprised me. This is the most important game of the week for playoff leverage, is Lions at Panthers, 1 p.m. Because of the Lions really being in the thick now of the NFC wildcard race. And because of this wacky NFC South where
so
everybody
ridiculous.
is still in it. So like the Lions are 55% to make the playoffs if they win, but only 16% if they lose. And the Panthers are 22% if they win and 7% if they lose. I don't know how you guys have the Panthers. I've heard a lot of people talking about how the Panthers are like hot lately. And I feel like that their defense has in the last few weeks played good, but not great. They're 10th in defensive DVOA since week 10. And Sam Darnold has had 2 out of 3 games in which he's been better than Sam Darnold usually is. But don't you expect Sam Darnold to turn back into a pumpkin in the long run? So I don't understand this idea that the Panthers are suddenly hot. The Lions are hot, but I don't understand this idea that the Panthers are suddenly like a hot team.
Yeah, we've got these two teams in the bottom kind of quadrant of the team rankings, 24th and 25th. The Lions are 24th, Panthers are 25th.
Oh, we have the Lions much higher than that. We have the Lions 9th now, but we have the Panthers 28th.
Yeah, so a bit of a split there. Obviously, the Lions have been playing. The Lions buried themselves with their historically bad defense so far early in the season. It's going to be hard for total points to look back on that one. But I agree with you completely. To me, there's no way a team that goes 7-10 should be allowed to win. Let them win the division. Don't let them into the playoffs. Get another team that was 10-7 or whatever it is into the playoffs.
See, I'm kind of old school. I feel like, you know what? We have a division set up. The goal is to win your division. Every team talks about their first goal is to win their division. That means somebody has to win every division. And I think
right, you win your division, but you don't get to be in the playoffs.
I could be wrong, but I feel like recently those teams that get into the playoffs with a losing record tend to win their first round game.
They get a home game. Well,
like the
ridiculous.
Beast Quake game. And Washington lost. Washington got in and lost to Tampa Bay in 2020, but they played really well in that game, and Tampa Bay almost lost to them. And yeah, it's weird. Like, it would not be weird to me if Tampa Bay won the NFC South and beat Dallas in the first round. That would not. It
wouldn't be weird to me if Tom Brady made it to the Super Bowl with a 7-10 record.
Yeah,
like I do think that would be terrible. I don't know. I don't need a pennant system, but like, come on. I don't know why that gets you into the tournament.
So Jared Goff, speaking of a team that if they get into the playoffs, will get in legitimately with a winning record. Jared Goff is now second in passing defense-adjusted yards above replacement behind Patrick Mahomes. It is phenomenal production. I mean, that is not proof that Goff is suddenly a top 5 quarterback. I'm curious where total points and IQR have Goff. I feel like Goff's production this year is a really good argument for Ben Johnson as assistant coach of the year. That is the Lions offensive coordinator. And the fact that, I mean, they had a good offensive line, but they've coached that offensive line up, and they've got good receivers, but nobody's a game-breaking receiver. I mean, even Amon-Ra St. Brown is not Devontae Adams. He's not Justin Jefferson. Like, the fact that offense is doing so well there's a really good coaching job.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on Ben Johnson. He's been awesome. Goff is up at 8th in total points now, been ascending the list, been one of the leaders the past couple of weeks. Amon-Ra St. Brown is 8th amongst receivers in total points, just below some of the guys that you mentioned, but not far off. And he has been fantastic for them. I fully agree with you. And also not just the high level stats, but this is a fun offense to watch. Like they do some exciting things out there.
Jared Goff's been number 1 in passing points earned since week 12. And I mentioned week 12 because that's when Sam Darnold took over as the Panthers quarterback, and he's been second over that span.
I know. The Darnold thing over the last 3 games is weird, but to me, it's like Darnold can randomly have 2 good games out of 3. Like, I don't feel like we've discovered that Darnold is actually good.
Yeah.
I don't know why I feel that way about Darnold and not about Goff, but I partly because Goff's done it longer. Goff's done it all season. He wasn't this good in the early part of the season, but he was good in the early season. They just had no defense.
Darnold doesn't even have a qualifying number of snaps. Like, I think it's pretty obvious that this is a team that was so bad that they fired their coach. And then we see some regression to the mean after that happens because the conditions that get a coach fired are generally unsustainable. Like, I think you'd have to be really, really kidding yourself to think that Sam Darnold is the guy at this point. I don't know, maybe do it for the rest of the year and then you can reinvest in him. But I don't know. Geno Smith happened. So what do I know?
I don't think Goff is necessarily the guy either. I would still say to Detroit to seriously look at taking a quarterback with that top pick that they got from the Rams. But I mean, what's important is that he's producing right now and that they look like they may be on the way to the playoffs.
Yeah, it looks like it was a win-win trade in terms of the Stafford-Goff deal for both teams. Even though the Rams will have some misery going forward, that championship.
Yeah, championship banners fly forever, man. The Rams, people, I've seen people suggest the Rams might have lost that trade. The Rams won that trade.
But trades aren't about winning. And like, how come in sports, when we talk about trades, it's winning and losing the trades, but like in the economy, trade is good, right?
So this was a trade that helped both teams. Both teams got what they wanted out of that deal.
That should be why you make trades, right? I'm good at farming. You're good at manufacturing.
This has been Econ 154 International Trade. I took that senior year.
Corey, anything else on the Lions-Panthers game, or you want to flip forward to our second game of the week?
One thing that's interesting that I came across, we've been a little bit down on the Lions defense. They started out the year horrendously and have played better since. But in terms of the way that they strategically play, they're top 5 in both man coverage and blitz rate. And if there's anything that Sam Darnold's proven to be mistake prone against, it's those type of looks, specifically man coverage over his career, minus 47 points earned against man, plus 70 against zone.
Wow. That's a good argument for the Lions right there. And the fact is the Panthers defense has improved a lot over the last few weeks, but so has the Lions defense. So the likelihood that the Panthers defensive improvement is real is about the same as the likelihood that the Lions' defensive improvement is real. I mean, they got back, for example, Romeo Okwara, who might be their best pass rusher if Hutchinson isn't, and they have him back now. And so, there's some more of that putting that pressure on Darnold in man coverage.
Let's flip forward. Aaron, what do we have as the second game of the week?
The second game of the week, this is one where I really want to compare where we have this. These are the two teams that have
the fraud bowl,
complicated DVOA all year long. The New York Giants at the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota Vikings, the worst 11-3 team of all time by a lot, by over 10 points of DVOA, like so far below any other 11-3 team of the last 40 years. And the Giants, despite having a winning record, are only 22nd in DVOA. The Vikings are on pace to be the biggest Pythagorean overperformer in NFL history. Yeah. Based on points scored and allowed, right? Based on points scored and allowed, they should have 7 wins, not 11.
And how do they compare to one another, the Vikings and the Giants, by DVOA?
We actually have the Giants slightly higher than the Vikings. But the Giants are higher on offense and special teams. The Vikings are higher on defense. We have the Giants' defenses really bad.
So we do too. The Giants have the 30th ranked defense by total points, but also the 22nd ranked offense, adding up to the 29th ranked team overall. So we think the Giants are putrid.
Higher.
Yeah.
And then where do you have the Vikings?
And the Vikings we have at 19th. So bottom half of the league, we'd expect them to be close to 500 based on how good we think they actually are. But total points has them pretty balanced, 18th on offense, 17th on defense, kind of a middling team with the Titans and the Commanders.
Yeah. And if subjectively, right, if someone said to me, subjectively, where would you rank the Vikings? Not based on your numbers. I'd say probably closer to where you have them. Probably more like 19th than 25th. But that's still like historically ridiculous overproduction. I mean, they're 10-0. They are 10-0 in one possession game. The Giants are 8-2-1 in one.
These are the teams you want to play in the playoffs. You want to draw them.
They may get each other in the playoff.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. This could be a rematch game.
This could be a rematch. This absolutely, depending on what happens to the Vikings. If the Vikings are the 3rd seed, the Giants, it's likely that the Giants look like the 6th seed at this point, especially if the Giants win this game. So then they probably play each other as 3 and 6. They probably play each other in the wild card round.
Oof, it's a brutal year in the NFC. Corey, what do you think of this one?
That's hilarious, first of all. I kind of want to see it, but I actually don't. So the Giants' run defense is what really drags down their defensive rating according to total points. They're last in run defense total points. One thing I noticed is they actually handle zone running schemes pretty well, and that's what the Vikings run. They are first in zone scheme ratio in terms of what they use on offense. Giants run defense, 39% positive play rate allowed against zone, 52% against man, and allowing 2.5 yards less per carry against zone than they do against man. 6.6 yards per attempt against man.
Interesting. So that seems to be an argument in favor of the Giants here.
Yeah. So what's a weakness for the Giants may not be so much of a weakness for the Giants against the Vikings. I know that I recognize that they're 5th in SIS pressure rate. So the Giants do bring a lot of pressure, and the Vikings are 25th in pressure rate on offense. So Cousins is going to get pressured in this game.
Right. I think both sides, you can expect that there should be caution as far as dropping back to pass too often. I think for both of these teams, it goes back to their general quality.
Giants play a lot of man coverage, and Kirk Cousins has been historically good against man coverage. So interested to see how that plays out this week.
Yeah, I think I just wrote about that on ESPN. But yeah, every year he's better against man than zone.
Last 4 seasons against man, 48 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Against zone, 45 touchdowns, 28 interceptions.
That's pretty interesting. So there's a point for Minnesota. You got any more of these tidbits, Corey?
I actually do have one. Both teams are pretty poor defensively against play action, and both teams on offense are in the top 10 in terms of play action rate on offense. So both teams will probably look to use that to their advantage and be pretty effective with it if the numbers hold up.
Here's what I know about this game. this isn't mathematical here, but God, it seems like every game these two teams play is close. And so I love Giants +4 here, just because, my God, doesn't it feel like a game between these two teams has to be decided by 2 or 3 points?
Just inevitably, it'll end up being that way.
Yeah. Giants +4 in the over.
I like the over
too, yeah.
These defenses are, and especially the way that the numbers stack up, I think favors the offenses.
All right. Well, I'm going to circle back on this game in the Betway Betting Corner. So we can keep moving it forward here in terms of the games of the week.
Let's talk a little bit about the Bengals and the Patriots. Even though the Patriots are mostly out of the playoffs at this point, they still have a 33% chance to make the playoffs if they win this game. The Bengals are basically in, and their chance to win the division looks better now that it now looks like Lamar Jackson is going to be out again this week for Baltimore against Atlanta. So the Bengals are in the playoffs. At this point, it's just whether they win the division or whether they win a wild card. So, the Bengals are, a really good team. They are better this year than last year. I think that's the most important thing for people to understand about the Bengals.
Yep. Is
that last year they were an average team that won an extra game or two and then went on a nice run in the playoffs. This year, they are a good, top of the league, top 6, top 7 team.
I agree. And that's exactly where we have them by total points. We've got the Bengals at number 7. We've got the Patriots at number 12, actually trailing number 11 Jets and number 10 Dolphins. So you see how kind of crowded that all is there.
DVOA has them in the exact same spots.
That's
Bengals 7, Patriots 12.
And it must be accurate.
So it must be accurate.
But I agree with you totally. Defensively, the Bengals are a different team than they've been in the past. Their front four is really, I think, one of the underrated position groups when you look around the league. And then we know about what they have in terms of Joe Burrow and their receivers. And, man, you can make the arguments about the quarterbacks from that class. You could go back and forth all day between Burrow and Herbert and Tua and Hurts.
I think Burrow has the best mix of stats and eye test dominance.
I agree.
Right now, it would be hard to argue. Hard to argue against a guy that went to the Super Bowl already and has produced like he has after being the number 1 overall pick, in that situation.
Hurts' eye test has been pretty amazing this year too. Burrow's been doing it for a little bit longer.
It's interesting because comparing Hurts is a little different because you have to try to filter in the rushing value that isn't such a big deal for the other 3 guys. Tua's got the numbers and Herbert's got the eye test, and Hurts and Burrow have both.
Although for me, I think it's a competition between. For me, if we say Burrow's in the pole position, it's right there with me and Herbert for him in terms of who I would want if I was starting a team. If I was a free agent head coach trying to find my next job, which of these, you'd feel pretty good about hitching yourself to probably any of these guys, but Herbert would be right there for me along with Burrow, where to me, there's a little bit more of, okay, we're going to have to figure out how to make this work when it comes to a Tua or a Hurts. I think there's win because of potential with Herbert and Burrow. I think you're win with when it comes to Tua and Hurts, as good as they've looked at times this year.
Hurts might be a win because of God.
It's amazing to think because
really good
what his reputation was.
Value,
Yeah.
I like that offensive line. I like some of the stuff that he has going on around him too.
Who Hurts? Yeah.
Well, all of these guys, except for Herbert, really, right?
Well, that's part of the problem, right? Herbert's numbers are down this year because the offensive line is wrecked and the receivers haven't played, and his offensive coordinator keeps calling stick 9,000 times a game.
So we got Burrow, who's been great. We've got Mac Jones, who hasn't been. What's the argument here that the Patriots can do it? I know you're kind of down on them, but beat the Bengals here, and then I think you get the Dolphins in the penultimate game, and you'd probably be right back into the mix with 2 wins.
Yeah, and then the possibility that the Bills don't play starters in Week 18. But look, the argument for the Patriots to win this game is the defense. The Patriots have the number 2 defense in the league by DVOA. They have a very strong defense. Now, the problem is they have a relative weakness against passes in the middle of the field, and Burrow is very good at passes in the middle of the field. So they also bring a lot of pressure, and the Bengals take a good amount of pressure. So that's a good reason. That's an argument in favor of the Patriots defense. But the Bengals are just a better all-around team. I feel like the Bengals are rightly favored in this. And there's a chance of the Patriots winning. The Bengals are the better team.
Corey?
Agree with all of that. I don't think there's too much more to be said. I think the Patriots have shown an elite defense over the second half of the season. I think their biggest strength is against the running game, and I don't think that is. I think we'll see the Bengals, who they've shown to be as a throw first team and win through the air, so less of a factor. The Patriots are going to dominate on the ground game. They haven't been too shabby through the air either, but I think the Bengals all around are just the better team. Like Aaron said, wouldn't surprise me if the Patriots pulled it out. Kind of like them to cover the spread in a close game, but Bengals are the better team coming into this game.
Worth noting that we have this according to the 33team.com/trenches-tool. We have both of these as kind of poor offensive line against front seven matchups.
Oh, yeah.
Both sides of the ball here. So I don't know where you're at. I don't know what the over-under line is on this one, but we should go back to the well a little bit on the under bets being a strong thing to count on, especially when you have offensive fronts that are overwhelmed. That could be a play here.
Yeah, it's 41 and a half is the over-under on this one.
You got it. And with many of the games this week, weather is going to be a factor. Looks like it's going to be temperatures in the 20s with 10 to 15 mile an hour winds, which is bad, but not as bad as we're going to see in other places, but still something to consider.
No, it's interesting. I built an over-under system this year. We finally are doing over-unders at Football Outsiders. And I know this may surprise people, but wind speed did not come into play in the system until you reach 20 miles an hour. Like even 15 mile an hour winds, the system, it didn't tell me to decrease the projected over-under. It's only when you reach 20 miles an hour, which is what they're going to have in like Cleveland.
Mm-hmm. Good to know. Yeah, and Cleveland really looks like 30 to 40 mile an hour winds with wind chills like -20.
Yeah.
Miserable.
Yeah. The whole country is going to be really cold on Saturday. On Saturday.
I'm looking for Hendrickson or Judon. If they do drop back, they should feast on either of the offensive tackles of who they're going up
against. Is Hendrickson going to be back for this game?
I think he's limited in practice, so I don't know whether he'll be back.
That's interesting to keep an eye on.
Judon is interesting. If you look at Brandon Thorne's sack tracking that he does on his site, Judon has a lot of low quality sacks, by which I mean where he has been either untouched or he's been like the last guy in on the coverage sack or something. He doesn't beat guys as much as like Myles Garrett and Micah Parsons beat guys. That's not an argument that he's not a great player, but it is an interesting argument against him for defensive player of the year.
That's interesting. That kind of runs at odds to some of our stats. I don't know if I'd favor him for defensive player of the year. I'd favor him for like very consistent defender of the last 3 to 5 years or whatever it would be.
Patriots free agent signing since since Welker probably.
We have the Patriots as a team in the middle of the league in terms of number of unblocked sacks. I'd have to double check what his personal numbers are.
They're like all Judon.
They're all Judon unblocked sacks.
From watching the Patriots, I can tell you, like, the unblocked sacks are like all Judon, and the ones where someone got beat are like all Uche.
That's interesting. We still like him. In.
Oh, no, I'm not saying he's a bad player. I'm just saying if you compare him to like Micah Parsons and Myles Garrett, I think he leads the league in sacks, but the quality of his sacks is not as high as like Myles Garrett.
The odds for defensive player of the year right now, Nick Bosa's the favorite, which is
interesting because Parsons was
Parsons was a runaway favorite for a while,
for a long time.
Yeah, I just opened that up and was surprised to see Bosa's taking over the lead there.
I legit do not know who I'm going to vote for between them.
I don't follow too much of the betting market, so I'm curious. I hear people talking about Jalen Hurts being in the MVP race. Now he's injured a little bit. Does that lock it up for Mahomes, or is there other stuff that I'm not thinking of here that people want to bet on for some reason besides Mahomes being the best player in the world?
Unless like Josh Allen goes nuts in the last 3 games.
That'd be hard.
And Mahomes has bad game. Yeah, I think Mahomes is the guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was Mahomes for a while, and then Hurts took over as the front runner for the past few weeks, and now the injury has Mahomes back up. Looks like minus 250, minus 300. So pretty heavy favorite. I will say, without
giving much away, I will say that the panel is a little bit more analytically inclined than it has been in the past with new people on it this year.
I made a really good argument for Micah Parsons to be defensive player of the year last year analytically. And
so the fact that Mahomes leads Hurts in pretty much every advanced analytical stat probably matters.
Yeah, I can't see whether you're talking about from like a analytics perspective, from like if you asked football coaches about who's impacting the game the most, if like it's hard to imagine some large number of people like for Corey, for you to say that Hurts was ahead in the odds. As I wish I was a betting man, because I would have been all over that one for Mahomes. Yeah, I can't fathom it.
Yeah, I know that insight from Aaron about the committee. That's definitely something to consider. But I think Hurts, the way he was playing, the team's record, I think that put him first in the eyes of the odds makers. And now obviously missing time is brought that back the other way.
Let's stay with the Jalen Hurts conversation and go to our next important game of the week. What do we have up in the 4 slot, Aaron?
I was going to say Gardner Minshew conversation, because Eagles at Cowboys. So this is one where we can talk a little bit about it, but obviously things are different. The first time these teams played in week 6, the Eagles won, but there was no Prescott. And now this week there'll be no Hurts. It's definitely going to be Gardner Minshew. And I mean, the defenses are still, pretty much fully healthy. These are the number 1 and 2 defenses in ESPN's pass rush win rate and in sacks and in adjusted sack rate. Although I will note the Eagles are actually a little lower than the Cowboys in the SIS pressure rate.
Although they're the number 1 in terms of pass rush total points. Shockingly enough, we have the Giants as number 2 before the Cowboys at number 3 on a per play basis with those 2 defensive tackles.
The Eagles have been 6th against the run in the last 5 weeks, so they've solved that problem. Their pass defense has declined a little bit, but their run defense has been outstanding in the last 5 weeks since they brought in Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh. They're the number 1 defense in the league against deep passes, and they're the number 1 defense in the league against number 1 wide receiver. And they held CD Lamb to 68 yards in the first game, although again, Cooper Rush. So, I mean, this looks like a great game between 2 great teams, but it's not quite as great because it's going to be Minshew for the Eagles. But I feel like Minshew's a good backup. Like if you ranked backups in the league, he'd be
top 5.
He's not
easily.
As good a backup as Garoppolo, but he's pretty high up there.
If you count Garoppolo as a backup, if you're better than your starter, are you the best backup or are you a low-end starter?
I mean, theoretically, Garoppolo was the backup this year, and he was the best backup in the league.
But he wasn't even the best backup on his own team.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting game. It's going to be a chance to see how valuable Jalen Hurts is to this team and also how good the rest of this team actually is, which I think the case has been made here with the metrics that the rest of this team is phenomenal. Interesting dynamic. These teams are also on track it's the most likely scenario that they'll match up in the divisional round of the playoffs. Cowboys are looking like the number 1 wildcard team and going to probably play the winner of that Bucks, Panthers, whoever comes out of that division. So good chance the Cowboys could take them down. And then maybe the Eagles don't play this 100%. Maybe they don't want to put too much on tape. They want to leave some things.
Yeah, because all the Eagles have to do is win one of their next 3 games and they get the number 1 seed. They can lose this game and be perfectly fine. Right.
You obviously want to beat the Cowboys if you're the Eagles because just the rivalry and the nature of that. But like I said, it might not be an all-out open up the playbook and dig deep and throw everything you have at them here.
Yeah, this game's super interesting to me because there's sort of like a lot of almost sort of like these teams are foils for each other in interesting ways, where we've seen Dak Prescott be the quarterback we can count on for Dallas, except for when he's injured. And now this year we've seen Jalen Hurts be the quarterback that we can count on for Philadelphia. But now we've got the injury replacement in there. And it's the other way around with what's that replacement situation going to look like. The big question for me is not Minshew's ability. Like you said, Aaron, he's a great backup quarterback. The question for me is how the loss of Hurts affects the Eagles' run game. Yeah. On paper, that's a huge advantage for them in this game, and maybe a bigger advantage than anything that the Cowboys have when they have the ball. You look at the offensive line of the Eagles, we've got Lane Johnson as the 2nd-ranked tackle by total points in the league. We've got Landon Dickerson as the 2nd-ranked guard, Ciamalo as the 5th-ranked guard, and then Jason Kelce, of course, as the top-ranked center. These guys are legit up front. And then you look at the weapons around, Goddard in the top 10 of total points at his position, and Miles Sanders, and of course, A.J. Brown. All of these are reasons why the Eagles have been the Eagles this year. But does the run game require the advantage that Hurts creates in order for all of these pieces to kind of click into place? Or can that be something that sustains despite the lack of the theoretical extra blocker that you get by having somebody like Hurts out there?
I mean, my guess is that, not to be punning, but this will hurt. My guess is that not having Hurts hurts the running game. Absolutely. I mean, having a mobile quarterback helps. There's no question about it. It's definitely, you can see it in the number.
I think this is another aspect where we're going to find out, based on how things play out on Sunday, how much of a factor it is. From what I was looking at, it doesn't seem like there's that big of a difference between Minshew and Hurts throwing the ball. This season's version of Hurts in terms of accuracy and frequency to different parts of the field. So if you have a kind of a neutral replacement in terms of throwing the ball, there's obviously the huge discrepancy in the mobility and the impact that has on the game. So I think that will be determined on the field on Sunday.
Here's another one where I would keep an eye on the under. I'm going to go back to the well and on the unders thing a lot as we go forward. That's the only thing I have any faith in anymore.
Here's another one I have under then, which is the last game we wanted to discuss, which is Packers at Dolphins. This is the best of the Christmas Day game.
I just want to say, when they made this Christmas Day schedule, they were probably feeling great about how these games were going to look.
Yeah, Nickelodeon gets the first game of the season with absolutely no playoff importance whatsoever. Yeah.
Take that, kids.
That kind of works because I don't think kids will know that.
Yeah, Packers and Dolphins, man. Packers with the worst run defense in the league. The Dolphins love to pass the ball, but, I mean, you want to run against the Packers. It's interesting. The Packers pass defense is strong against short passes, but weak against deep passes. So this is a really good game to be running and play actioning. And I think the Dolphins do have the receivers for that. I don't know if anybody else agrees with me. Probably you do agree with me.
Well, I agree with you that on that side of the ball, but the Dolphins might raise you one in terms of the porousness of their run defense. They've also been atrocious as a run defending team. We've actually got them even worse than the Packers.
Oh, wow. Really?
We have them 31st on a per play basis in terms of defending the run. So just real trash on both sides. And the Packers actually have the running offense to make you pay for that. The Dolphins haven't been able to get their run game going all year, despite that theoretically being.
Yeah, and I don't know what's up with Jeff Wilson. He missed last week.
And you'd want to see that as good as in his action Mostert looked last week. The one thing going for the Dolphins, they've been a different team at home than on the road this year. This 3-game losing streak, 2 games on the West Coast, 1 game in Buffalo. Now it is December in Miami, so those September and October advantages that they had, like when they played Buffalo at home, those are gone. But this game seems like a really interesting battle between, like, which team do you have less trust in here? Because I think there's a lot of distrust to go around in this one.
I think the Packers are better than people think. We have them 13th right now.
We've got the Dolphins 10th and the Packers 15th.
We have the Dolphins 8th and the Packers 13th. So roughly equivalent. Yeah. I mean, I think the Packers are a little better than their record. I think they can definitely make a game of this.
I don't think you mentioned it. What are the Packers playoff odds if they win?
23%.
If they win?
Yes.
Slowly climbing
2% if they lose. They have to win out to make the playoffs.
They got to win. They've got 8 losses already, right?
I think they have to win out and get help. Yeah.
Yeah. But it seems like if they do win out, they'll get there.
Their odds to make the playoffs are in the plus 700 to plus 800 range. So if you think they can win this game and go on a little bit of a run, you might want to check out those odds.
Yeah.
But you want to trust this Aaron Rodgers? I don't want to trust this Aaron Rodgers. The guy that I trusted is gone.
You've talked a lot lately about Tom Brady pulling out the miracle.
Tom Brady must have what, 70% playoff odds at this point.
To make the playoffs for sure.
Yeah. And I think Brady's been better this year than Rodgers.
It's been miserable.
That's interesting.
Everything sticks out to me. All I can see is whenever they seem to be in so many third down and longs, and just seems like an automatic.
Look at Brady's running game. Look compared to the Packers. Mm-hmm. Brady's running game is horrible.
Yeah, I mean, just the volume of passing from Brady proves that.
Yeah.
By our metrics, Rodgers has been surprisingly mediocre as opposed to just like awful. Brady has been the worst Brady we've seen since right before he went to Tampa. So we were checking that out a little bit.
He does seem, I don't know, a little bit checked out. So maybe once the playoffs come, he would definitely be a little bit more motivated then. So you might be right. Yeah.
I'm waiting for them to get in the playoff matchup, and they'll probably get somehow the Giants and the Vikings in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs and find their way into being the favorites in the championship game. All right. Up next, we'll announce the SIS All-America team, and we'll have Nathan Cooper and Jeff Dean from the SIS scouting team next week to break it all down.
It's time to release this year's All-SIS college football teams. These were voted on by members of the Sports Info Solutions Operations Department, who incorporated their own scouting and our player value metric total points in their assessment. Our first team offense at quarterback, no surprise, the Heisman winner, Caleb Williams from USC. Our running backs, Bijan Robinson from Texas and Blake Corum from Michigan. At wide receiver, you know the great pedigree of Marvin Harrison Jr. He made catches for Ohio State at every level of the field. And Jalen Hyatt, one of 2 first-teamers from Tennessee. Our tight end is Michael Mayer from Notre Dame, the runaway leader in total points at that position this season. On the offensive line, the tackles are Darnell Wright from Tennessee and Joe Alt from Notre Dame. Wright tied for the lead in total points among tackles. The guards are Isaac Cochran of Air Force and Hadley Panzer from Kansas State. Cochran led all offensive linemen in total points. And the center is the Outland Trophy winner from Michigan, Olusegun Oluwatimi. On defense, our defensive tackles were Jerzon Newton of Illinois and Jalen Carter from Georgia. Newton led all FBS defensive tackles in total points this season. Our edge rushers were Tyree Wilson from Texas Tech and Will Anderson Jr. from Alabama. Anderson is the only All-SIS selection from both last year and this year. The linebackers are Jalen Ford of Texas and Cedric Gray of North Carolina. We have a linebacker defensive back hybrid slot and award that to one of the most exciting players in college football, John Marshall at Navy. On their roster, they list him as striker. Whatever the position, he's an All-SIS selection. The cornerbacks are Travius Hodges-Tomlinson from TCU and Devin Witherspoon from Illinois. Hodges-Tomlinson had the most total points of any non-quarterback this season. Witherspoon had the best passer rating against. The safeties are Jason Taylor II from Oklahoma State and Brian Branch from Alabama. And our first-team specialists, kicker Christopher Dunn from North Carolina State, Australian punter Adam Korzak from Rutgers, and return man Nico Remigio from Fresno State. Be sure to check out the full All-SIS team at sportsinfosolutions.com and follow us on Twitter at football_SIS.
This episode of Off the Charts is brought to you by Betway. Football season is in full swing, and you can get in on the action with Betway. From NFL to college football and more, Betway offers over 1,000 betting markets, generous promotional offers, and incredible Betway boosts. New customers get up to a $250 free bet upon registration. Download the Betway app or visit betway.com to start playing today. Betway boosts have limited availability. For new customer offer, must be a new verified Betway customer, over 21 and present in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Iowa, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, or Virginia. Minimum deposit of $10 and opt-in may be required. For full details, see terms and conditions. Free bet funds are not the same as cash and are subject to restrictions. Visit betway.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit betway.com/RG.
All right, up next, we've got the same crew with us, just like we invited Corey into the Games of the Week conversation. Corey has invited Aaron into the Betway Betting Corner. So, Corey, let's get it started right off the bat. Who do you got this week in your parlay?
This week, I'm starting things off with who I think is the best team in football right now. I'm taking the 49ers -6.5 at home against the Commanders. So, betting that, like I said, the best team in football right now can handle a mediocre opponent. They've won 7 straight games by an average margin of 18 points. Just need them to cover a touchdown here. A few factors at play. It's been a long week for the 49ers. They played on Thursday night. Long week to recover and game plan for this matchup. Washington played Sunday night and then had to travel cross country for this one. So difference in rest there. And then I think one aspect that the 49ers, I think they'll dominate across the board, but one aspect in particular in the trenches. Washington did take down the Eagles, which was a huge surprise earlier in the year, kind of the front runner in the NFC at that point and still at this point, but they did that by dominating possession, dominating on the ground, and At least at that point of the season, that was the Eagles' Achilles heel. Still 28th in run defense points saved. San Francisco's number 1. And according to the edge tool by the 33rd team, Washington ranks dead last in the trenches on offense. San Francisco ranks first. So hard to see them losing this game. Hard to see them not winning this game in pretty convincing fashion.
Yep, I'm with you. I loved that bet too. I would have taken it on the money line because I'm afraid of parlays now. But that's the biggest one that you look at there. The number 32 blocking team in the league, Washington, against the number 1 run defense, number 7 pass rush in the 49ers. That matchup seems insurmountable, and it's not like the Commanders have a put your team on your back type quarterback, a guy who inexplicably wins games, but is ultimately not a great NFL quarterback.
And I'm pairing that with Steelers money line Sunday night against the Raiders. I think there's a few factors here, and one of them is motivation. I don't think, at least the forecast knows or projects that this is going to be a very cold game, whether the temperature is going to be in the teens, 10 to 15 mile an hour winds. I just don't think the Raiders want much to do with that. Their playoff hopes are basically non-existent at this point. So to have to play in the cold after traveling cross country, Christmas Eve, they're just like, let's bring on Christmas. Let's get this game over with. Special motivation for the Steelers. They're going to be honoring the 50-year anniversary of the Immaculate Reception and retiring Franco Harris's number, who tragically passed away earlier this week. So that's going to be a great ceremony. And I think the team, the fans are all going to be really into it to bring home a win here in his honor. He was going to be the 3rd number retired in a pretty historic, very successful Steelers franchise. First one since 2014. So NFL purposely scheduled this game on Christmas Eve against the Raiders for that purpose. And the tragic passing of Franco Harris, I think, adds a little bit of fuel to the fire for the Steelers. 2 motivational factors there. And I think Steelers are playing some of their best football right now. We have them as the 15th ranked defense. SIS does, formerly a we thing. But they've been a lot better and a lot different with TJ Watt on the field. They're 5-2 in games that TJ Watt has played, 1-6 without him. And weeks 1 through 9, when he was mostly out, almost entirely out, they were 27th in run defense and pass defense, 31st in pass rush. Since then, since week 10, 1st in pass defense, 2nd in run defense, 13th in pass rush. So this defense is really, I think, a top unit, especially the second half of the season.
Yep. I like the emotional play there, going with the Steelers and sort of the night game, playing all that. So that was the Steelers on the money line, and you said the Niners -6.5?
Correct.
And what kind of odds are we looking at when we parlay those together?
Mm-hmm. The parlay starts as 157, and Betway is going to boost that up to plus 200.
Ooh, I
Pretty
like
good
it.
odds. Yeah, me too.
I know you've been doing this betting thing long enough that I would trust that eventually you will regress to the mean in your results here.
Yeah, book it.
All right. Aaron, you want to go next or you want to hear mine first?
No, I'll go. I'm going to start off with the Detroit Lions -2.5 against the Carolina Panthers. We talked about this earlier in the show. I think the Lions are much more for real than the Panthers are. I know the Panthers defense has improved in recent weeks, but the Lions defense has also improved in recent weeks. And I just believe in the Lions offense. So Lions -2.5 against the Panthers is my first pick.
Fade Darnold. Love it.
Fade Darnold. And then I'm going to pair that with the Seattle Seahawks +9.5 against Kansas City. DVOA has these teams much closer together than you would think. We have Kansas City 6th and Seattle 11th. Kansas City is the best offense in the league, but we have their defense 24. And while it's true that offense is more predictive than defense, both of these teams are better on offense than on defense. So that sort of works in both teams' favor. And I'm also kind of counting a little bit on this Kansas City trend where they tend to win games and then kind of take their foot off the gas in the fourth quarter and end up with close losses that became close because the other team scored at the end.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. 9.5 is a lot of points.
They needed their foot on the gas the entire time against the Texans last week.
Yeah. So I like the idea of Seattle covering the 9.5 points. So that's my parlay. Lions -2.5 and Seattle +9.5.
Corey, what kind of odds and what kind of boost can we get from, can I say our people at Betway?
Yeah, you're part of the family. So Aaron's pairing two spreads here. You and I have tended to mix in a money line or some kind of alternative line with our parlay. So Aaron's going with two spreads. The number is 260. If you pair those two, Betway's going to boost that to plus 325. Ooh. So Aaron made two good arguments there. You can get those at plus 325. Pretty solid.
I got to drive out to Pennsylvania to get some of that.
Still waiting for things to get legalized here in Massachusetts.
It's on its way.
I know, we're close. It's like hot up in the house or something.
All right. Last but not least, well, probably least, it's me. I've got my bet here. And after I was so disappointed last week by Drake London, this guy, I'm this close to winning my parlay, and this guy needs to fumble when the Falcons are about to get into field goal range. I would have tied the game up. You expect there to be another field goal after that. I lost by 4.5 points. Should have won by 1.5 points. I blame Corey. It's the easiest thing for me to do. So,
welcome to the world of bad beats.
But it was my own fault. I've been here preaching unders, and I chose an over.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're to blame.
Okay, I'm to blame. You're right. So this week I wanted to go with two home favorites. I wanted to keep it nice and simple. I wanted to find the teams that I trusted to come through and win. One of them, and I think it's kind of interesting what I came up with because I didn't love the options available to me this week. In one of them, I actually went against Aaron. Not that I took the Chiefs minus 9.5. I took the Chiefs on the money line, so I hope we can both win that one. A nice 7-point win would be good there as far as that goes. But like you, we have the Seahawks better than you would expect. We have them as the 8th best team overall, the 7th best offense overall. But if there's one guy I trust in this league, it's Patrick Mahomes. And I have a hard time seeing the Chiefs losing the game outright at home to the Seahawks. Famous last words, but that's one that I am taking on my first leg. The other one, we talked about this game before, and you guys made me even more nervous about it than I was going into things. But the Vikings against the Giants, I think that the Giants are the bigger fraud. The game is taking place in Minnesota. I know there are Giants fans all over New York that want to send me text messages and DMs about how they keep winning games. And are you sure that Daniel Jones isn't good? And yes, I'm sure. So stop texting me those things. I'm putting my money on the Vikings here. The Vikings, like we said before, just our 19th ranked team, but the Giants at 29th. So give me the Vikings at home. Give me the Chiefs at home. Just money lines. I'm not playing with points on any of this stuff. Mm-hmm. And Corey, tell me, I at least get into plus territory here on bringing these two together.
Yes, you do. I can't fault you for playing it safe here. I think this is a good bet here. It starts at minus 20 if you take those two teams money line, but Betway's going to boost it to plus 100. So you get boosted from a minus number to a plus number, and it's like a double up. If you bet $10, you make 20, and you just need two of the better teams to win.
There's for the Vikings to win by 3. Giants will still cover.
Perfect. Yeah, well, we'll be right in lockstep together this week, Aaron.
Yeah, well, I agree with you on the Chiefs, too. When I say Seahawks plus 9.5, I am not expecting the Seahawks to win.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've got 3 good bets locked in there. Make sure when you check it out, go into the Betway app. Make sure you're in the right app for whichever state you're located in. And as a reminder, you can sign up with that $250 free bet if you use betway.com/offthecharts. And then you can go in there and find our off the charts special lines in the parlay section.
Mm-hmm. Those will go up on Friday. You can find them in the Betway Boost section. Also spend some time with us on Christmas. We're going to be running a promotion on Christmas Day for the NBA slate. If you bet $20 or more on any live line for any of the NBA Christmas games, you get a $20 free bet. So worth some time. Check it out.
All right.
Aaron, anything on your end you want to plug before we get out of here?
FootballOutsiders.com has all the content we usually have. I would plug our All 32 column that Derek Klassen does, which does require an FO Plus subscription, but he's taking this week off for Christmas. So that's a really good column, usually on Fridays, but you won't find it this Friday. But you will find all the usual Mike Tanier content, all of our DFS suggestions, all of our advanced stats, weekly fantasy projections are all that part of FO Plus. So check out all the stuff on footballoutsiders.com.
On that note, we will sign off and get out of here. For our producer, Justin Stein, Corey March, Aaron Schatz, and the football R&D team, I'm Matt Manocherian, and thank you for listening to the Off the Charts Football Podcast.